Good evening, the Ranter's back to go yet another rambling diatribe of the news of the day. And we are continuing with the fallout of the horrific presidential debate performance from Joe Biden and the calls for him to step aside and stop running for president in favor of somebody else to take up the mantle and to challenge Donald Trump on his bid for a second term in his own right for presidency of the United States. Now, we're going to start with who is calling for him to step aside. And we're going to go into different details in that, and then we're once again, I will subject you to my opinion towards this. But, let's start with this, though. So, this is from the New York Times. Which Democrats have called for Biden to drop out of the race? Let's see. Public calls by elected Democrats for Biden to step aside is 9 out of the 213 representatives in Congress, 1 out of the 47 in senators, and 0 of the governors. The angst amongst Democrats over President Biden's debate performance is intensifying, with some party members voicing concern about his candidacy, some others urging him to withdraw. At least a half dozen top House Democrats have also reportedly told colleagues privately that Mr. Biden should end his candidacy. A growing number of donors and business leaders have added to the pressure by calling on Mr. Biden to drop out, with some threatening to withhold dollars. The situation is threatening to divide the party ahead of the National Convention next month in Chicago, where Mr. Biden is scheduled to accept the Democratic nomination. Here's what the politicians have to say so far. Said Biden should step aside. Peter Welch, senator from Vermont. For the good of the country, I'm calling on President Biden to withdraw from the race. He had a previous statement saying that I really do criticize the campaign for a dismissive attitude towards people who are raising questions for discussion. That's what he said on July 1st. Michael Bennet, a senator in Colorado, expressed concern. I think we could lose the whole thing. Expressed support. Gwen Moore, representative from Wisconsin, I will continue to support President Biden's re-election bid. See, there is a bit of a schism that's going on in the Democratic Party on this. Mark Vasily, representative of Texas, I think he has gone a long way to go. He has got a long way to go, and I think there are stronger candidates that would be more likely to beat Trump at this point. But if he says that he's going to stay in, he's the nominee. Jasmine Crockett, one of my rising star favorites of the House Democrats representing Texas. This is not the time to play fantasy president. That's not what we do in this country. We have a democratic process. Pat Ryan, representative from New York. For the good of the country, for my 2 young children, I am asking Joe Biden to step aside in the upcoming election and deliver on the promise to be a bridge to the new generation of leaders. See, these are in this. They divided the quotations between those that said they should step aside, those who expressed concern, and those who were expressing support. So I'm kind of going to follow this in that kind of line. Laura Trahan, representative of Massachusetts, while President Biden has made it clear that he feels he's the best candidate to win this election, nothing that has happened over the past 12 days suggests that voters see things the same way. Nida M. Vasquez, representative of New York, I support Joe Biden, and it is time to focus on re-electing him in November. Earl Blumenthal, representative of Oregon, while this is a decision for the President and the First Lady, I hope they will come to the conclusion that I and others have. President Biden should not be the Democratic presidential nominee. Patty Murray, the senator from Washington, I believe that President Biden must do more to demonstrate that he can campaign strong to beat Donald Trump. Glenn Ivey, representative of Maryland, my view is that the best way to beat Donald Trump is moving forward with a Biden-Harris ticket. Antonio Delgado, lieutenant governor of New York, he can add to his legacy, showing the strength and grace by ending his campaign and making room for a new leader. John Tester, senator from Montana, President Biden has got to prove to the American people, including me, that he's up to the job for another 4 years. Catherine Cortez Masto, he has always had Nevadans back. She is a senator from Nevada. whether it's on the picket line, protecting our personal freedoms, or lowering costs. Now it's a time to have his. There is a whole line of these quotations, and I will put this in the description so you can read all of them, because there were a lot. All right. With that, that was just a sample of the pros, cons, and concerns in the middle of this. Now, I share the concern that these representatives and senators and other officials have. It was a splash of cold water seeing what Joe Biden was on the debate stage. Now, a few people have re-watched the debates after the shock has worn off and re-watched it, and they came back and saying that, Joe Biden, his debate performance was terrible. However, the points that he actually did make were points that scored, that actually was made. He was concise in what he was talking about when he was able to come out of it. People have scoffed at the idea of him having a cold, or all the jet lag, or traveling through 9 time zones, or this and that. Now, I can understand the concept of him having appear debilitated because of a cold, because he's 81 years old. That happens. Now, translate that to somebody who's maybe 61 years old and having a cold. We might be seeing a bit of a different result here. Some people may scream ageist on this, but the problem is that biologically speaking, we as human beings are going to slow down when we age. And things are going to happen, especially if you're capping that 80th decade of life. It is obvious that if he can be that debilitated from having a cold and having the travels that he did, that he was exhausted and this and that. I'm not going to scoff at that, because I believe all of that to be the case. However, can you honestly suggest that somebody who is 10 to 20 years younger, with the same kind of conditions that Biden went through in his travel as president, doing his duty as president, and then being sick with just a minor cold, do you think that if a younger man of that, with the same setbacks, walking into a debate, would have the same result? Be honest. And you saw on my video how I was taken aback by his performance and how he looked and so forth. And it wasn't me being upset at Biden. It was me being upset by everybody else that propped him up. The deal with Biden's age is something that we were talking about back in 2020. We kind of had an inkling about it in 2016 too. We actually kind of figured, at least we and people that I've talked with, kind of figured that 2016 would have been his final shot. But because of what happened with his son Beau, we understood why he was not going to get up onto the ticket to try to continue on after Obama. So let's, before I go into another matter on this, because I'm kind of trying to do something concise here, let's entertain the possibilities of, if Biden does see the light, because I too also believe that he should step aside. I'm not going to be one of those people that deny that he has had accomplishments as president. He has. I saw somebody who was so politically biased and partisan against Biden, he refuses to acknowledge that there was any accomplishments that he had, anything that he'd done to approve that made things work in this country as president. As bad as I will be a partisan against Trump, you point a accomplishment that he made that that benefits people in this country, I will acknowledge that, because that's how honesty works. If you're going to be a partisan hack and just the only thing he accomplished was making us closer to China. What the fuck is that bullshit? Come on. No, but if you can't bring up Chips Act, if you can't bring up the infrastructure that he, on his watch, had gotten accomplished as something that Trump nor his predecessor Obama was able to do. Tried to do a bipartisan border deal, which was written mostly by Republicans, conservative Republicans like Lampert, but had to get scuttled, and we know why, and I'm not going to repeat myself on that. If you're not going to be honest enough to say that accomplishments were made under his presidency, then you're just being a political hack. Just being partisan and just refusing to see any positives. Because here's the thing. You can still vote against someone even if there are positive benefits to it. If he has a policy issue or stands against something that you disagree with and you don't think is the right man for the job, you vote against him. That doesn't mean because he's president you have to pout. You have to pout like this and totally ignore if he's done anything as president or has been on the helm of the White House when positive things have happened. If things have gone directly from him being there, or has taken a stand that inspires people to go out and do positive things. Again, point to me something that Trump has done, and I look at it and I see that he's done it, I'm not going to lie and say he didn't do it. No matter how much of a trunk derangement syndrome nonsense that I suffer from. But, be that as it may, despite the benefits that we have had as Biden as president, it's time for him to step aside. So let's entertain who could rise up in his place. Because there's one thing that Biden says that he believes one of the reasons why he's staying in a race, that he believes he's the only person that could beat Donald Trump. No. Sorry, Mr. President. No. See, because I still run on the theoretical notion that if Trump had dropped out of the race, or someone of the Republican Party got the nomination instead of him, Biden would lose. If Biden did step aside and someone rose, even Kamala Harris rose to take the mantle against Donald Trump, that Democrat will win. In an odd way, Donald Trump and Joe Biden are the flip sides of the same coin. Each person is damaged politically, depending upon gaffes or political stances or lack thereof, or just personality-wise, too much history, we know too much that we cannot possibly just think that there is not blood in the water between one or the other. However, they need each other because the only way they feel like they can win and stay viable is that they're facing each other. The best possible outcome for Trump is Biden to stay in the race so he can actually beat him. The best possible outcome for Biden was Trump staying in the race, because then he could conceivably beat him. It won't be a blowout on either side, but with them both still in the race together, their chances of one beating the other is better than another person stepping in. So no, Mr. President, unfortunately I do not believe that is the case, that you're the only person that can beat him. You're the only person that has beaten him. But again, I actually question that too. Not that I'm questioning the results of the election. No. The elections were fair and square. I just think Mr. President, and I think that anybody who is hardcore supporting President Biden, and those who are against Biden and didn't believe that he won fairly or whatever, pretty much everybody, pretty much anybody on the right side or the Trump side, let me explain this again. Because I said this a few times over the past few of these videos. Trump lost 2020 because people did not want to vote for Trump. Biden won 2020 because the vast majority did not want to vote for Donald Trump. Donald Trump is hated more than Biden is loved. A vast majority of millions of people voted against Donald Trump. Record-breaking numbers of voters voted against Donald Trump. I mean, think of the enormity of it. There wasn't ride or die bikers for Biden. Biden was not bringing him in by the bushels, how everyone points to crowd sizes for Trump because his ego needs to be stroked. Nonetheless, more people in this country who already saw 4 years of what Donald Trump was like said, I don't want any more of that. And they voted against him. With it being Biden on the other side of that ticket was the happenstance. They were going to vote. They weren't going to vote for Trump. And so they voted to make sure that Trump did not get the election. So they voted for Biden. Not because they love Biden or like Biden or thought he was the proper person for it. He just wasn't Trump. That was 2020. And up including recent current events in our news, with the way Biden's performance was at the debate, you know, that fact of 2020 almost just evaporated in the air because, you know, as bad as Trump is that Biden just looks his age. And he is in decline. We are seeing it. Up to recent current events, which we'll get into in a moment, but let me go back and say, so who would you want to rise up in Biden's place? Maybe some people would want Bernie Sanders. I voted for him twice in this 2016 and 2020 primaries. I voted for Dean Phillips this time around because I wasn't going to vote for Biden in my primary. But again, the problem is that he is too old. He's a great voice, still dedicated to his causes. But if we are complaining upon the fact that Joe Biden and by extension Donald Trump is too old, Bernie Sanders has to be in that conversation too. So, it's that out of the way. So who would you have? Gavin Newsom? Okay, California. Okay, there's that little checkered political policies in California that Gavin Newsom is behind and or is being criticized about. Is he a national name? Kind of. I remember seeing him going on Bill Maher's show a number of times, so there's that. I think one of the criteria that you're going to have is that whoever you're going to prop up has to be a national name. That people will go, oh yeah. Because again, I will maintain that any Democrat that steps up to Trump will win more assuredly than Joe Biden will. But you have to know who this person is. So, Gavin Newsom, okay. Who else? Who else has said outside of the crop of people that were in the nominating field that no one ever heard of, like Dean Phillips? I just voted for him because I didn't want to vote for Marianne Williamson, the magic crystal lady that believes all we need is love. Well, I heard a bit of her conversation talking about the topic of Joe Biden and so forth, and she was very clear and concise. I may have to change my opinion on her. But it's interesting, the list of people that they brought up in a hypothetical matchup upon who would win against Trump, and Trump was still either neck to neck or beating some of these people. One person crushed him in this hypothetical poll, and that was Michelle Obama. Let's entertain this thought for just a minute. Now, what would be the benefits of Michelle Obama coming into her own, deciding to rise up and to take the nomination if Joe Biden releases the delegates and they all vote for her? Well, there's not too many people outside of those who are just hateful shits. There's not too many actual factors socially or on its face that has a problem with Michelle Obama. And if you wanted Obama in the White House, well, the first gentleman would be Barack Obama. So there's that. And plus, the other one is more of a petty thing, but there is that delightful, insidious symmetry of Trump was giving Obama shit over a birth certificate back in 2012, to the point where Obama showed his certificate and then completely humiliated Trump in the correspondence dinner. Trump never beat Obama in anything. And he spent, and since Obama was still on Trump's mind, the only active thing he actually did as president was roll back Obama regulations. He wanted to erase what Obama did as president, except for the border shit that he wanted to do more of, and anything that he took credit for that was a benefit somehow magically was actually stuff Obama did in 2011 or 2014. He still decided to claim it was him that he did it. That was even in the debate, one of the many lies that Trump did at the debate. It was taking credit for something Obama did. So yeah, there is that. And there's a beautiful, delicious symmetry to that. However, never going to happen because Michelle Obama is not a politician. She does not want to be a politician. She does not want to run for anything. How do we know? Is that she kind of made it clear that she disliked the politics when her husband was in the White House. Why? Because of the hateful, evil shit that was said about her husband, about her, and their children. Why? Why would she want to do that? Why would she want to subject herself to that? Especially to our rabid MAGA fan base that has already been told that, no one is going to question whatever the fuck they say. No one is ever going to be responsible in trying to rein them in when they go too far and they start being firebugs, flamers. And, the other thing is that she doesn't want to do it, and she's not a politician. Outside of being Barack's wife and her, and the thing that signified her as First Lady is that she wanted children to eat healthy and to get exercise. That fascist bullshit, that bitch. As opposed to Nancy Reagan telling children just say no, or Barbara Bush telling children, encouraging them to read. But Michelle Obama wanting them to eat healthy. Ugh. So who would you want to rise up to be the nominee? Like I said, the criteria is that one of the better criteria is that they have to be a national name. So who would you have? I'd be curious to see if anyone responds of who they would pick if the delegates were released at the convention. Here's the thing, though. As we are seeing with when I was reading upon nine House House Democrats, one senator is advocating for Biden to step aside. Many people are also in support vocally of President Biden, including AOC. The Black Congressional Caucus is for Biden. So there is a bit of a schism going on in the Democratic Party, being helped and flames being fanned by the media. Now, it is interesting how the media has been responding to this, and trying to needle every little Democrat they can find, of like trying to ask the same questions over and over again about Biden's condition at the debate, and what do you think, he should have 4 more years? Don't you think that he should step aside, or this and that? Or what do you think? What is your personal opinion? The same questions over and over again by the various forms, from Fox News to MSN to CNN, etc., etc. George Stephanopoulos had a recent interview with Biden, after which, and I have to say that Biden's post-debate has been hit or miss in how he's been responding to this stuff. So there was a bit, his interview with George Stephanopoulos was definitely a mixed bag. And George Stephanopoulos, after the interview with him, says that he doesn't think he has 4 more years that he can do. So that's another opinion. And that's another media opinion, and the media is pushing this, as they had pushed it with Trump. But here's the thing: I would respect the media pushing on Biden for this matter, because it's right in front of our eyes, and we have to acknowledge it and discuss it. Flip side of the coin: it seems that we can only do one at a time. We can't possibly have an equal time of talking about the various lies that Trump was able to get away with, because no one was allowed to fact check him, according to the instructions of the debate, of how that was coming to be. For as much cognitive decline and that is going on with Biden that we are seeing, you're seeing the same amount from Trump. There was a supercut of all these events where Trump either drifted off or started slurring his words, going off in different tangents for no apparent reason. I mean, we can go back to this recent one he did in Florida, that he went off on about some waitress for some odd reason, or his Hannibal Lecter, the late great Hannibal Lecter bullshit, or that boat, beautiful battery in the water, sharks. I don't know any of that, whatever that was going, so forth. And they did the supercut of that, and then they showed the neurological patterns of his hands he's trying to hold his hands still from shaking, or him in that awkward lean that he does. And not to mention the fact that he was found guilty of 34 counts of a felony. But despite all that, no one is calling for Trump to step aside. No one's calling his cognitive decline into question. People are on his side of the aisle, and people in his friendlier medias are just saying, "Oh, those are just jokes. He's just laughing. He's just joking." Or they totally ignored, and they will refuse, especially people on the five, whenever they try to compare Joe Biden and his decline to Trump's, and they get upset and talk over people of how much there's a complete difference. Nope. I think there's a fundamental difference that we see between the political parties. It maybe comes down to the humanity of it. Sure, there's a practicality and a pragmatism in wanting Joe Biden to step aside for politics' sake. I can understand that. But there's also humanity. Democrats and favorable people in the media are looking at Joe Biden's decline and saying he should step aside for what I mentioned in politics, but also out of humanity. you can almost feel that the man is suffering needlessly. He doesn't have to. He can step aside. Someone can step up to take out Trump. And he will be honored for that. The type of selflessness and sacrifice that you could say could harken right back to George Washington when he, after his second term, decided, I'm not going to run for another one. 2 terms. That's it. And that became the staple. People went out of their mind that George Washington would give up that amount of political power, give up being the leader of the country. George III, who was going mad, thought he was going mad for giving up the power. But he did. At some point, we're all human beings, and we can only do so much until we hit that wall. You don't want to keep banging into that wall because it becomes noticeable to other people. Sometimes you just gracefully just say, I hit my ball, I hit my limit. I can step aside. I can be the elder statesman. That, when someone else takes the place of being a president, an elder statesman has value. They can still travel the world and representing our country. He went to NATO with him the past day or so, and did a pretty decent speech upon it. He is respected by world leaders. There is value in Joe Biden still in politics. It's just not the value, unfortunately, of maintaining being the president. I would like to hear from people who they would consider to be good replacements. Now, with all that aside, I would have been totally on board with the whole ousting of Joe Biden, or any way, shape, or form, because of the humanity of it, that he really needs to step aside. However, further current events kind of put a little bit of a desperate edge on this now. With the Supreme Court ruling that a president, with the example being President Trump, will have an official act absolute immunity to the things that he will do, as he can claim as an official act, that would be very difficult to question whether or not those acts were official or not for them to have the immunity or not. And if the courts deem them they have the immunity, then you can't even gather evidence. You can't even ask what he did or what he didn't do, because it's an official act. Which can include, taking bribes for, foreign interests, or for the good of the country, staying in office, or for the good of the country, killing a political rival, and for the good of the country, if they try to impeach him for that murder, because that's the only recourse you can do with a president while in office, for the good of the country, cap the impeachment managers who bring the impeachment on the floor. So even that's a little circular argument. Now, the Supreme Court ruling is a culmination of a lot of other rulings that they've been doing recently that have been rather pro-corruption, pro-looking the other way. The Chevron deal is a pretty big deal. And various other things that have been going on, neutering the some of the counts of people who have been convicted of their activities during the January 6th insurrectional riot. With that Supreme Court ruling, that really puts the perspective of what needs to be done here, with terms of Biden, in terms of whoever can rise up to the Biden. Because here's the thing. We all see Joe Biden as the old man in decline. The other side now is a man also in decline, with no morals, that has just been clarified by the Supreme Court that once he becomes president again, official acts will have absolute immunity. He is tantamount to a king, blessed by the court. So you got the old man versus the mad king with no morals. And here's the thing. For the people who want to get rid of Biden, and you want to have your conversations about it with the media or the politicians or anyone in the middle that wants to get rid of Biden and are gleeful about it, like Sink is being gleeful about it, here's the thing. You got till the convention to say what you will and hope and pray that even I will hope and pray that Biden sees the light, sees the futility, sees his own limitations, and gracefully steps aside. But once the convention comes and goes and Biden is still the nominee, back him. With all the deficiencies that are going on with Biden, do you want to risk what will happen with Trump as president with effective royal immunity? There's many things that Trump has already said that he wants to do as in when he becomes president again, including some retribution on those who that challenge him. For those who dare, elicit that he should have, consequences for his fucking actions. Mass deportations, deportation camps. Hey, that's good. Let's bring back some good old fascist wording. Like, let's throw them all into camps. Yeah. And he'll be able to do that. Official act. The official act of a president to order that border agents shoot people coming at the border, crossing the border, or looking like they're crossing the border, or just looking at the border. How about that? At the time the Supreme Court decision went down, the Trump family foundation inked their deal with the Saudis in order to have a Trump Tower in Jeddah. So that's a whole lot of money. A Trump Tower right in Saudi Arabia. I'm sure that won't, that won't lead to, foreign favors, a little under-the-table money that a president of the United States will now totally be able to have and to implement favors for a foreign power because it's an official act, absolute immunity. Ooh. As I said in 2020, more people voted against Trump than they actually were voting for Biden. Trump lost because vast majority of people who voted against him, and the only way for them to vote against him was to vote for Biden. It is imperative for those who are like-minded thinking people who do not want to have a mad king with the authority of a king back in the White House with an enemies list. I made the slight point a few times in my social medias is that, if Trump became president with this official act immunities, having any political discourse that might be a little critical, that might be a little dicey. Now keep in mind, when I say something like that, I'm not pulling this out of the air. Out of my imagination. We have historical precedents of previous presidents who decided that certain criticisms, either from foreign or domestic sources, of a president or the president's government might not be conducive for our republic. John Adams' Aliens and Sedition Act comes to mind for me. Abraham Lincoln, when he first came into office in the first years of either the first year or the first 2 years of his presidency, did various things in order to secure his government, which were not exactly legal. Suspending of habeas corpus is one of those various acts, and arresting judges who has sympathetic Confederate leanings. He even contemplated arresting the Supreme Court Chief Justice of the United States. So, with that that is at least 2 examples of historical reference points of when a president thinks that they shouldn't be criticized, or that their government at a time of a civil war can't be questioned or can't be undermined by, at least by the courts. What do you think somebody who is a pouting child in a high level 70-year-old man with vengeance and stupidity will do with absolute immunity? Do you want to see that? I know his fan base wants to see that. They want to see the own the libs as put people on trial. People think this is the French Revolution and they should be hanging all the dissidents that disagrees with Trump. So I'm going to again express to you is that you got up till the convention to say your piece upon who you want to be nominated. If your active position that Biden needs to step down. But after the convention, whoever's there, including Biden, if you do not want Trump in the White House, no matter how much you don't think that he's going to win, back him. If you can't back him because you just simply do not like Biden, fine. There are third-party options. Have fun. Then you can wash your hands and I wasn't responsible for this. But this is not the year for third-party experiments. Remember, in 2016, Trump did not win the popular vote against Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton did not lose because of Russia. It wasn't some flipping of names of one thing or another. No Russians hacked any voting devices, anything else. And if anything that they did do, this online stuff, just, troll farms and propaganda bullshit, that only the wonks really would have been affected by it, not the actual casual people. Well, one of the things that did affect the voting in the margins in some of these states was the third-party vote, was the Jill Stein votes. So you get that little sliver of Jill Stein votes in certain states that would have gone to Hillary Clinton. If Jill Stein wasn't there, Hillary Clinton wouldn't have gotten, she would have gotten that state. So if you want to play your third-party game to prop up either Jill Stein again or Cornel West or any of these other third-party hopefuls out there, just know that if they get any significant number, that is a significant number away to Joe Biden, and then he loses a state. You don't want to hear that, I know. You don't want to have the responsibility of that, I know. And again, if this wasn't... I hate the cliche of this being, the end of democracy as we know it. I said that in the other video, in the previous videos, that, I laughed at that melodrama. It's not funny right now. Not with the prospects of what you have going into the White House if Joe Biden loses. And I understand your argument of trying to get us out of the uniparty or having getting us away from the two-party dominance. You know what? Then why aren't you all propping up a third party in the middle time. You've had 4 years. If people in the majority are that fed up with politics, draw your money away from the Democratic and Republican Party. Prop up someone else. So a third-party option. And then if you're going to say, oh, well, we can't do that, or we could try to do that, but then they just crush that, the DNC or the RNC will just crush that, then this is a circular argument, because then you're not trying. Now, let's wag your fingers and scold people for voting Democrat or Republican. So one of the things I'm not going to be blaming if Trump goes into the White House, I'm not going to be blaming Trump voters. Even the most flaming rabid ones that I have complete disagreements with, that I think they act like fucking children in front of me, I'm not going to be blaming them for Trump winning. It's going to be people who are actively sowing discontent and dissent in the Democratic Party, or outside the Democrats who are flinging their shit at the Democrats and at Biden. One of the things that galled me was that Susan Sarandon in the 2016 election, who made it pretty clear that since Bernie Sanders wasn't going to go in, she wanted to make sure Trump won over Hillary, not only because that she hated Hillary, but because she said that she would rather see the country go down in flames and be completely horrible under Trump, so that people would turn to someone like Biden in the next election cycle. She'd said that publicly. This is, and I know people think of this privately. People think, well, Trump is going to be this bad. It'll be horrible. And then so when he destroys this country in such a direct, overt way that people will get the wake-up call and get all progressive, what do you think is going to happen? We have an example for people who can remember the 4 years Trump was president. Outside of talking, outside of tweeting, also outside of rolling back regulations that Obama did so we can erase the Obama administration, and outside of being the guy that did the most drone strikes more than Obama, and then hiding the fact because as much as he likes playing drones, he doesn't want people to know about it. What did he actually do as president? I mean, there was a prison thing that was beneficial, which we can all give credit for, but we can also credit that to Kim Kardashian and Kanye West for putting that into his BB brain that rattles in his skull. Well, maybe, if we got, every other week he had an infrastructure week to, distract you the fact that he's not doing shit, or he's doing completely horrible shit that he doesn't want you to notice. And he's going to push, even though he has disavowed it for about 5 minutes. If it's not him, it's going to be those that will benefit from him being president. They're going to push the Project 2025. Now, people who either want Project 2025 to happen, or they just are complaining that people are paying attention to 2025 and everything's burning around them. They're just talking about this. This is the benefits of having a 24-hour news cycle and high-speed internet and social medias at a fingertips, that you can find out about this shit. I brought it up last time around, is that I think it's funny how we were so aghast at the physical and emotional mental conditions of Joe Biden. Imagine if there was a 24-hour news cycle, social media, high-speed internet, where a single thought can be broadcasted and posted and reposted and resold, reshared, and so forth during, I don't know, the Reagan administration. How coherent do you think Reagan was within his second term, shall we say, when he's not propped up to do, when he's not propped up on speeches? How was Eisenhower doing? How about FDR for 4 terms, hiding the fact that he was in a wheelchair due to polio? Imagine the fearfulness that would be and then having a 24-hour news cycle. Could people be that petty to go after him for him being in a wheelchair, making that a deficiency that he shouldn't be running the country because he can't even stand up? William Randolph Hearst, who thought that Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a Bolshevik, who had a little bit of leanings of let's say, sympathy for Nazi Germany, that didn't want to do too many Nazi stories in his newspaper, and tried to stop Walter Winchell from doing his radio shows upon what's happening with Nazi Germany. He wanted to publish pictures of FDR, President Roosevelt, in a wheelchair. Just because. Doesn't that sound like people who take pictures of Joe Biden at the World War II, World War I ceremonies, and where they edit the picture of him barely being able to sit down, or him waving at someone in the distance that they crop the picture so you don't see, so you just think he's waving to no one? People who call themselves Christians were making fun of him going through a cemetery, claiming that he didn't know where he was, he didn't know what he was doing. What are these things, Tic Tacs? People who call themselves Christians was insulting an elderly man for that. So don't give me shit if I decide to respond in kind towards your beloved fucking Trump. But the thing is, as much as I oppose Trump, I would not go after his age and decline if I did not see the same behavior being bent towards Biden. If no one was saying shit about that, then I wouldn't say shit about that. Why? Because he has already been president. There's plenty of things to go after Trump that is valid, that you don't need to go after, make fun of his decline in his age. All I can do now is just point at the hypocrisy of those who want to whine about Biden's age, but don't care about Trump's age. Want to whine and complain and laugh and find it funny that Biden is in cognitive decline at his age, but then completely ignore it when Trump does it in front of your fucking faces. But since he's your guy, we can't acknowledge that. No, we can't acknowledge that. No. They are 2 old men, separated by a very short amount of years. You don't care how declined Trump is. And due to this Supreme Court ruling of what would happen if Trump became president again and he had that absolute immunity, people who oppose Trump will be obliged not to care about Biden's decline. Because if he is the nominee after the convention, if he stays the course, stays in the race, as he has said in a mixed bag of interviews, good and bad, of how he responds to this, in order to prevent a mad king from taking over the White House, I would vote for a head in a jar. And if anybody wants to keep this American experiment going before it really turns into something that we do not want, that we are seeming to be inevitably sliding ourselves into, then after the convention, be it Biden or anyone else, cut the shit. Stop with the dissension. Stop with the disagreements. Stop with the schisms. Back the person if you want to defeat Donald Trump. And if it's Biden, even if you believe that he can't win, he's going to be the last stumbling block between Trump and the White House. You vote third party, it's going to go right to Trump. Because that cuts away from Biden. You don't want the responsibility of that? You don't want to hear that fucking fact of life? Then do this. Do this. Don't hear it. And then stop paying attention to politics. The rancher rants because current events is making me rant. It is the old man versus the mad king. If you can come up with some better casting, I suggest you do it soon. Because after the convention, whoever's standing there, if you don't want to be, if you're not going to vote for Donald Trump and you don't want Trump in the White House, after the convention, back who's there. That's it.